No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex,
be excluded from participation in,
be denied the benefits of,
or be subjected to discrimination
under any education program
or activity receiving
federal financial assistance.
Hello and welcome. I'm Julia, the eldest member of the Equality League Youth Council and a collegiate athlete. The Equality League's mission is to advance gender equality in and through sport by changing discriminatory policies and practices. The advocacy efforts of our founders have improved access, equality, and safety in sport for women and girls worldwide by contributing to passage of the Safe Sport Act that protects young athletes against sexual abuse, and by working with coalitions to overturn the hijab ban in basketball and the Iranian stadium ban that excluded the 41 million women of Iran from entering stadiums to watch men's football matches for 40 years. When the coronavirus abruptly halted sports, the Equality League leadership decided to give it back by developing a youth council of 14 Gen Z student athletes whom they would mentor and train to advocate in real time in the categories of advocacy, campaign creation, athletes' rights as human rights, storytelling, and coalition building. Last year, we wrote a letter to Congress and followed up by phone, email, and social media to advocate for passage of the Empowering Olympians, Paralympians, and Amateur Athletes Act into law. Now, we're preparing to represent our generation by advocating for student athletes' rights to the Congress-appointed commission. I'm proud and excited to introduce the Equality League Title IX 50 by 50 advocacy campaign in partnership with Champion Women and Facebook. Our goal is to close the gender gaps in college sports by supporting student athletes to take legal action in each of the 50 states by the 50th anniversary of the Title IX enactment, June 22nd, 2022.
Thank you, Julia. My name is Kennedy. I'm another member of the Equality League Youth Council. So with this presentation and a digital toolkit featuring Champion Women's materials, we seek to create awareness, inspire action, and provide support so that other Gen Z student athletes can advocate for themselves and the future of girls and women in sport. Based on information that colleges and universities are required to provide to the U.S. Department of Education, Champion Women analyzed and compiled data that shows that 90% of American colleges and universities receiving federal funding are breaking the Title IX federal civil rights law. Title IX is a federal civil rights law that should ensure equality in education. But 49 years have passed since its enactment, and there is an enormous gender gap between scholarships and recruiting dollars, opportunities, benefits, and treatment between college women and men athletes. Some of the gender gaps include nearly $1 billion in scholarships, $160 million in recruitment, and 200,000 opportunities in terms of teams or places on the roster that would need to be created for college women and men to close the gender gaps. There are also disparities in benefits and treatment, such as quality of equipment, medical care, travel conditions, media coverage, and social media promotion. Now I'm going to hand it off to another member of the Equality League.
Thanks, Kennedy. I'm Leela, a competitive gymnast and recreational boxer. As student athletes ourselves, the EQL Youth Council ambassadors empathize with our peers who love sport as much as we do. Some of their schools are using COVID-19 and budget deficits as an excuse to drop teams and reduce opportunities. We want to acknowledge the courageous student athletes from Dartmouth, Stanford, University of Connecticut, and University of Iowa, to name a few schools. And the Title IX experts who inspired this 50 by 50 campaign for student athletes to take legal action in all 50 states by the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Title IX calls for proportional opportunities based upon enrollment. It does not demand that everything be 50-50 across the board. If college women enrollment is 48%, that's the percentage of sports opportunities that they should receive. Likewise, if it is 52% or any other number. Taking legal action doesn't necessarily mean there will be a long process where your case is eventually tried and decided in a court of law. A school may settle with you earlier after any one of these steps. 1. A Title IX attorney sends a demand letter to the school on your behalf. 2, a Title IX attorney threatens to file a lawsuit, or 3, a Title IX attorney files a lawsuit. Don't wait until your sport is cut to measure the gender gaps at your school. It may already be one of the 90% of colleges and universities that isn't meeting Title IX requirements, and you can take legal action to create new opportunities as well as reinstating those that were cut. This discrimination in college sports can stop with our generation of student athletes, their parents, and supporters are informed, inspired, and organized. And now, EQL board member Paul Beeben will introduce our experts.
All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us as we introduce the Equality League Champion Women Title IX 50 by 50 campaign to close gender gaps in college sports. My name is Paul Beeben. I'm a board member of Equality League, EQL. I'm also a journalist. I'm a TV host, and I'm a former college athlete. I played hockey and lacrosse at Yale. My wife, actually the mother of these two beautiful children, is a former college rugby player. She went to Harvard, and we support the EQL mission to advance gender equality in and through sport, because we believe that our children, all children, members of the EQL Youth Council, all daughters and sons, girls and boys, women and men, deserve equal access and safe access to sports everywhere. So today we're focusing on college sports and the Title IX law that requires equality in education. You're going to hear directly from student athletes who are courageously advocating for themselves and for the future of women and men in college sports on an equal footing. I'm honored to introduce our two experts, both Olympic champion swimmers from the 1960 and 1984 games, who have spent decades advocating for gender equality in sports. Nancy Hogshead-Makar is the EO, Executive Officer, I assume, Nancy, of Champion Women, hello, and a renowned civil rights attorney who was encouraged and mentored by Donna DiVerona, herself a champion swimmer, longtime advocate for the rights of athletes, and she has never stopped since she started swimming really as a teenager. I have a personal connection to Donna. Donna was my mother's roommate at UCLA, which is pretty exciting, way back in the day. She is also a former broadcaster who was really a pioneer in that field as well in athletics. So my dad played sports in college. He was a Heisman Trophy winner at UCLA. He was the quarterback there. He also met my mom and knows Donna. So this is a big family affair, and we're really excited to be sharing it with all of you. So welcome, Donna. Welcome, Nancy. As we train and mentor these student athletes to advocate, we want to acknowledge your contributions. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who's joining us. So I'm going to pass the mic to first to Lucia and then to Julian to get us started. Lucia, so why don't you talk first to Donna, sort of about the history of Title IX.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your decades of advocacy to improve sports for girls who are just like me. And first off, could you help us first
It's okay.
Could you help us first set the stage by describing how the Title IX law came about and when you first started to inspire and mobilize athletes to advocate for their rights?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of history. When I was Paul's mother's roommate at UCLA and watched his father play in the Rose Bowl and win, we had a robust, wonderful sports program for men only at UCLA. We had a championship basketball team, but at Pauley Pavilion. But the truth is, there wasn't even a women's locker room available to women athletes at that time because there were no programs. Most of us that went to the Olympics in those eras competed in club sports, community sports programs. And those were also limited. I say it was time, place, and circumstance that really worked in tandem to bring me all the way to the Olympic stage. And a lot of it had to do with my father, who played football and won in the Rose Bowl at UCLA. And he was a great athlete. And he felt with his 4 children, the best thing you could do was open the door for all of us to enjoy the benefits of sport. Fast forward, at 13, I make my first Olympics. Youngest member of the team. The men's 400 individual medley is on the schedule, but not the women's. And I'm the world record holder. But the seeds were planted about why is it different for men than women? So that set the stage for me when I retired at 17 to start looking at what was fair. It was during the civil rights era. It was during the Vietnam era. It was a time of great activism at UCLA where we'd get together in groups and with our minority friends, our African American friends, and talk about all the issues of the day. I wish every college had done that going forward. We may be in a different place in America at this point. And of course, 72 Olympics, 68 Olympics, I was in the announce booth covering sports. I was there when the athletes raised their fists in protest about what was happening in America. And I was there when we started talking about athletes' rights and a voice in the sports system. There weren't. Athletes had no voice on our Olympic Committee or within the IOC. So after the 72 Olympics, I came home and put a lobby of athletes together to go to Washington to get Congress to look at how our Olympic world was structured. And there was a fateful day when I met this wonderful woman, Margot Polivy, who said, this is 1972. The House has passed Title IX. I need you to get involved. And I learned about it, and that started me on a whole other campaign on understanding how federal legislation can really transform the whole playing field, not only Olympic level, but access to education and sports on the collegiate level for women.
Were you involved in the specific push to make Title IX law, or did you come in more after it was already law and become involved in the advocacy afterward to enforce it?
I came after. That credit goes to Edith Green, Patsy Mink, Birch Bayh, Senator Stevens, Nancy might have more names, Margot Polivy on the outside. It was passed right before the games in 1972 in Munich. But when I came back, there was all this discussion and always pushback on Title IX with amendments trying to gut it, with very well-known, renowned politicians and members of the NCAA lobby saying women's participation in sport is just going to upend all men's sports. And by the way, women aren't interested in collegiate sports. They just go to college to get married. That's some of the things we heard. So we had to figure out how we could get enough people on our side to push back against those arguments. So that's what started up me thinking about, and my friend Susie Chaffee, the skier, great Olympian, on how we could put a network of people together, which was composed of Olympians. And then when Billie Jean beat Bobby Riggs, I insisted that I meet her, and I said we should bring the tennis players together and the Olympic women together and men and create a foundation. So we have our own organization to do all the things we've needed to do over the years to protect Title IX.
Lucia has a question, a soccer player, about the U.S. women's national soccer team.
So I'm a soccer player, and I know that you were responsible for the U.S. women's national team playing in a stadium. They played in the Rose Bowl in the 1990s. So could you describe the opposition you faced?
That's a wonderful question. And again, I was privileged to be part of a group of people that advocated to go for the big stadiums. And the scene had been set during the games in Atlanta, 1996, when the soccer tournament, the final, the U.S. Final, our team packed the stadium and NBC didn't cover it. Unfortunately, Nike came back with an ad and said, you missed one of the greatest events during the games, the team sport of women's football, and this is what happened. So it kind of embarrassed the male-dominated world of sports television to get more serious about covering women's team sports. But usually you have to have that missed opportunity before that opens the door for something else. But after that, I was asked to chair the organizing committee for the Women's World Cup in '99. And the pushback really came from the press. FIFA said, let's go. Our organizing committee, made of incredible people who had already worked in the '84 Olympics and the Men's World Cup, had said, we can do this. We had great cities that stepped up. But the press really thought it's going to be a disaster. And the fact is, we filled the first First game, the opening game at the Meadowlands, full stadium, and then the whole tournament took off. But we couldn't get very hard to get sponsors. Hard to get FIFA to activate their sponsors. Hard to get coverage. We begged all the networks, and finally ESPN said, well, maybe you can do a time buy. That means you have to buy the airtime to show it. And by the final, ABC had moved it onto the network, and it was a huge success.
So Donna, you have been involved in so many aspects of this long battle for equality. Is there one particular experience that really stands out for you when you knew, wow, I'm really going to have to be in this for the long haul?
Well, I figured I would have to be for the long haul, but I also knew I had to have a lot of friends support me, male athletes, sponsors, and of course, politics is local. I had to make friends with people on the Hill. And how did I do that? I used to get on the train, and I even had my credit card cut up once because I was just running on empty. And I would befriend sometimes the staff members, and they would invite me to stay overnight at their homes, and I'd sleep on the couch, maybe on the floor, just for the next day, because one person would introduce me to another member on the Hill or in the Senate, and spent a lot of time doing that before someone in the White House noticed me, named Michael Harrigan, and President Ford was focused on a lot of the Olympic issues, and I was named to a commission, and that gave me a higher status. But it was an expensive campaign for me, and not just dollars and cents wise, but politically. I got a big pushback from ABC. I had to leave because I was told I should either pick activism on the Hill or activism for women's sports, because ABC was getting a lot of calls from football coaches. What's she doing on this Title IX? It's going to destroy men's sports, especially football.
Mm-hmm. So you paid a high personal price as well.
Over and over again, I have. Sometimes I'm popular, and other times when I take a position, I've had to sacrifice for it. But it's been worth it.
Something I can tell you is we were really lucky to have somebody like Donna as an advocate, because she's uniquely charming and uniquely able to make those long-term relationships with people to be able to get change. You got to remember that, that even to this day, that there's still a lot of people who are not in favor of Title IX and don't want it to be in force. And we see these huge gaps between men and women. But Donna DeVerona not only did she make friends with legislators, but she also figured out who were the up and coming leaders in the movement, who were the African American athletes that she could reach out to, who were the lesbian athletes that she could reach out to, she really looked out in the big picture and has mentored hundreds of us.
Well, one thing that strikes me when you say how complicated sort of the legal side of it is, on one hand, though, it's a very simple concept. The situation for men and women should be equal across the board. It's very and we actually saw a great example of that just this spring in March during the Final Four. Sedona Prince went viral showing a video, very simple. Here's the women's weight room at the NCAA finals, and here's the men's, right? This is how stark it is. So why haven't we seen more change? You've been at this for 49, 50 years now.
Nancy, I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah. It used to be that the Office for Civil Rights, which is underneath the executive branch, they used to go in and require schools to start doing more for women in sports. And they kind of have opted out. They're really not doing much. Two is the NCAA itself used to require schools in a process called certification to be moving towards gender equity compliance. Mark Emmert came on board 2010. They stopped requiring any gender equity compliance. And what we see is the numbers have actually gotten worse. So sex discrimination in athletic departments has increased by 27% just in the last 15 years. So it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And we had this idea that, well, history equals progress, that, with time, it will all be equal, and that's just not true. So when we recognized just how bad things were for women, Champion Women set out to create a website and to create information and to be able to partner with organizations like Equality League to be able to make some serious changes in the data to make sure that women actually did have more opportunities for women in sports, because the gaps are enormous. The difference is 183,000 opportunities, which is over 7,000 new teams, which is about 3.5 new teams per school for the entire country.
Right. Wow.
So these are just the scholarship dollars alone is $1 billion a year on what women are missing out on because they're women.
Right.
So we need to partner with the men and the women and the boys who are and the girls who are part of Equality League, because what I know as a lawyer is not hard for high school students and college students to know and be able to use for their own athletic departments.
When you put numbers to it that way, the hundreds of thousands of opportunities that women and girls are missing out on, I think it's easy for people to think, oh, this is only at the national level, this is only at the elite level. No, it starts in elementary school, it starts in middle school. And that actually brings me to this point I wanted to make. There's a pipeline of gender discrimination that starts early. It starts in junior and high school, then it goes to colleges and universities. And those are the feeders to the professional and national teams that we all know so well, and where these issues are really thrown into sharp focus. So we're all looking forward to the Olympics this summer. Whether it's going to go on without pandemic problems is another matter entirely, but there are going to be women on the international stage with America's Simone Biles, Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan. But if we don't change the system, we're not going to see women develop to any level, much less reach the top. So maybe talk a little bit, Donna, about the, Lucia, you can ask her about the IOC task force, right? Why don't you ask her about this?
So you've also served on the International Olympic Committee Gender Equality Task Force for 30 years. So what changes have been made over time?
Well, I'm pleased to say that because of this committee, and I think because of the leadership of individuals that benefited from Title IX scholarships in the U.S., one is a Moroccan, Noual El Moutawakil, who won the 400-meter hurdles in L.A. She benefited from a Title IX scholarship, went back to her country, and wound up on the IOC Executive Committee and the Women in Sports Commission. That was its first name. And then we have Anita de France, who was an Olympic rower, also a Title IX recipient, who's very powerful. And together with women around the world, we really pushed the IOC executive groups to accommodate women on the field of play equal to men. And we're almost there. Where we're really lagging is in leadership, coaching, and all those other things. But it took from the 80s all the way up to now to fight for that equality, and we had to keep the pressure on. And sometimes when you speak too loudly and you're too aggressive, they don't hear you anymore. And sometimes if you do, you're removed from the commission. But if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to one of Nancy's huge victories with Stanford University. And we're talking about young people advocating and the pipeline. Stanford was going to cut a bunch of Olympic sports. And 11. So I'd love for you to pick up that discussion, Nancy, on how they were basically forced to put back those sports. And it wouldn't have happened without you and your organization and without a coalition.
Yeah, we got all the sports, the men's sports, the women's sports, everybody, and the athletes, their parents, the alumni, and their boosters all together to talk about how a Title IX lawsuit and a fraud lawsuit could be used together to bring back these teams. If you talk to Stanford University, they'll say, the lawsuits had nothing to do with getting the teams back. But we know that's just not true, because as soon as the lawsuits were filed, all the teams got restored. I think this is important that for all the litigation that's been going on, whether it's William and Mary or Dartmouth or University of Iowa or all these other schools, that we're not just getting women's teams restored, we're getting all the teams restored. And part of the settlement agreement is that the school agrees to complete gender equality in opportunities, scholarships, and how it is that they treat athletes within just a couple years. So what these athletes are doing by stepping up to the plate is they are making sure that generations of women behind them have these opportunities.
That was a big win and a big lesson for other universities that are now putting some of the sports back, men and women, and especially getting back to the question about Olympic participation. Because our colleges provide the best nurturing ground at the right age to hone our athletes' skills to go on to compete in the international arena.
Sports are not just about sports and what happens on the field, right? We're talking about leadership skills. We're talking about social skills. We're talking about how teams are built in businesses and outside of the sports world. So access for women and girls is an important there's a huge social component to this that we also need to talk about. And I want Lucia to ask Donna a question about an effort that you've been involved in that direction.
So you've helped athletes on and off the field as a founding member of the EY Women's Athlete Network, and you conducted research on the connections between athletes and business. So could you tell us more about that?
So I went to Ernst & Young, the accounting firm, before the Rio Olympics, way before, because they have a winning win program, and they wanted to know what they could do for athletes. And I said, let's do research. So we found out that 96% of women, they make their way into the higher echelons of business, like CEO, COO, have had a sports background, and 50% competed in college. So that's a great statement to those out there who say, oh, well, so you can be an elite athlete, but what happens after? Well, we're finding our way into the highest echelons of business and in leadership, politics, and across the board.
It's not just that kids that participate in sports were going to do well anyway. We know that sports actually causes those extra benefits to happen. Almost no other after-school activity will help a child out-predict where it is that they would have gone otherwise. So they do better academically, they do better professionally, they're more likely to stay in the workforce, they're more likely to be healthier for the rest of their lives, including breast cancer and osteoporosis and mental health and depression and all those kinds of things. And so when you're denying these women and girls opportunities in sports, you're really denying them a future that they should have.
Right. I mean, really what you're talking about here is access to these resources as children, as teenagers, and as adults as well, is one of the strongest predictors we have for sort of overall life success, for thriving in the modern world. Athletics is a powerful predictor.
It sure is.
Thank you both so much for where we've gone so far. I want to turn over a little bit of the questioning now to Julian, who's going to talk a little bit about college. He's on the cusp of college himself. So, Julian, why don't you jump in with Nancy?
All right, Nancy, thank you so much for sharing your advice with us today. And our campaign's goal is to get the word out to college students. So what do these college students need to know?
So I encourage all students to go to our website, which is Title IX Schools, TITLEIX schools.com, and look at their school and see whether or not they're providing women equal opportunities to participate, equal scholarship dollars, and are they treating men and women the same way? And if they're not, then it's only the 18 to 22-year-olds. So that's you. That's you. Holding their feet to the fire and requiring them to comply with federal law. It's crazy that we're leaving it up to 18 to 22-year-olds, but that's who has to sign on the dotted line in order to bring a legal action. And the more times that we see positive responses, the easier it becomes for the next group of athletes to bring these cases.
Nancy, so just so I'm clear for kids like Julian and for college students, so they can go to your website and it's a searchable database of colleges and universities across the country, and you can find out how well your school is complying with Title IX.
We give every institution that's receiving federal funds, right? That's what makes Title IX attach, whether or not they are providing equal those opportunities to participate, scholarship dollars, and are they treating them the same way, right? So we have to give a thumbs up or thumbs down for those three different metrics. And according to our metrics, 90% of schools are not providing women with equality. 90%.
You probably didn't hear it, but Lucia just made a very disapproving noise. And I think that's a shocking number, 90%. I don't think people would imagine that at all. They would think, oh yeah, most schools have gotten this figured out. Oh no, in fact, it's quite the opposite.
It's quite the opposite.
Actually, when we looked at the data, we were equally as shocked that women are missing 1/3 of the opportunities that they should have. 1/3. We're actually looking at creating the same kind of website for high school sports. In high school sports, girls are missing 1.3 million opportunities to be able to participate.
I mean, we have work to do, which actually brings me to a question that I think Julian wants to ask you about his up-and-coming generation.
Yeah, so we've said that, my generation, Generation Z, has the solution to this problem. And what do you think that solution is?
Yeah, I think that the solution is coming up with community. Create a community to be able to support students like you, because it is students like you with the community that can make that change that will be ongoing forever.
Lucia has a question about, speaking of students being on campus, how do they get involved in a more concrete way?
So I just have a quick question. How would a student take action against their school? It seems like it would be a difficult process and also scary for that individual.
Yeah. So in order for you to be able to do that, you need to be empowered. You need to kind of know how the process is going to run. And Equality League and your peers that you're working with here and Champion Women can make sure that you kind of know what's about to happen so we can take the scary stuff away, right? 2 is to have a community of people around you, to have people who, somebody can go talk to the president of the university, somebody else can go talk to the athletic director, somebody else can go talk to the trustees, somebody else can go talk to the university, to the press. To be able to talk to women's groups on the university, to create that community to be supportive of the litigation. And so that you're not asking athletes to break that connection that they're going to have and that they want to have for the rest of their lives.
And I think what's so important there, Nancy, is that, a student like Lucia, a student like Julian, or their peers elsewhere, they need to feel supported. They need to feel like if I raise my voice, I'm going to have a community of people who understand how this process works and are going to support me in this action, that I'm not in this alone.
Correct. So it's unreasonable to expect either high school students or 18 to 22-year-old college students for them to go and do it by themselves. It's not going to happen. And it's also, you're just asking too much from them. Like, here's all the puzzle pieces and we teach you how to put them together. It's very doable. You all can do it. And it's not nearly as hard or daunting as you might think that it really is. Usually they know like the little things, like they know that they've got to wait until the football team's done getting their ankles taped before they can get their ankles taped. They knew very well that the men's teams were getting wonderful COVID testing and the women were not. They knew very well, having access to those academic resources, what kinds of facilities that they had, what kind of medical care. They know that and it sort of eats at them, but they don't really realize. I mean, we had some of the smartest students that you can imagine say, well, I mean, do we need to get a statute passed in Congress to stop this? Do we need to strike to do this? And I was like, no, Donna DeVerona was out there at the beginning making sure that you already have the statute. You already have the case law. We already have the regulations. People have given, both men and women, have given much of their professional career over to this, to the effort to make sure that you are entitled to equality. So we just need you to activate it.
The point there is, look, the law is already there. We just need enforcement, and we need people to complain about it to bring actions so that we force schools to come into compliance. It's just that simple. The law is there, but the enforcement is what has to happen.
Well, my daughter even said, Mom, they don't even teach us about Title IX in school. We don't even know. So oftentimes, to Nancy's point, you don't know what's going on around you. You don't know what options you have. And I maybe the colleges don't want you to know all about Title IX. I don't know, but it's there.
Without somebody as charming as Donna DeVerona is, and being able to push back on the pushback, that we still have a very strong Title IX. And that's why all the students that are involved with EQL and all the students that are bringing these causes of action, this is why they have such a good, strong law. When I started Champion Women in 2014, we spent millions of dollars trying to get schools to just do the right thing. We thought, well, surely if they had a beautiful legal memo that had all the facts included, that they would change their ways. And guess what? It just didn't work. We really wanted the result of having opportunities actually grow for women in sports. We wanted to move the needle. So that's why Champion Women came up with this particular strategy that we're working with EQL and all of you to get young people to require their school to comply with Title IX. Power needs to be met with power. And believe it or not, who has the power? Everybody who's finding out about the resources that we have here for you. You have the power. You need to have an attorney to be able to help you to make it come true. We can merge you. We can marry you with an attorney who knows what it is that they're doing and won't just go for the small wins, that will go for the big wins.
Well, thank you, Donna and Nancy, so much for this. It's been such an education for us. It's a privilege for me and my family to be a part of this process. We are so grateful and humble for your many years of expertise and hard work. So thank you again. I want to say to everyone who's here with us, participating in this exciting event, please look for the link to the digital toolkit in the post-event communications. That's where you're going to find all the information about this process, about how to get more involved. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. All of those links and information will be there. What we are all about here is focusing on our Title IX 50 by 50 advocacy campaign. What this is, we want to get students in all 50 states to file some kind of legal action by the 50th anniversary of Title IX on June 23rd, 2022. That's next year, just a little bit more than a year from now. This is our big campaign. It's not as difficult as Nancy said. It's not as difficult as you might think. We just need people to get involved. So thank you very much.
I'm Bella Leachin, and I'm here with my co-captains, Ashley Post and Eleanor Zwart, and we're members of the Dartmouth Women's Swimming and Diving team.
Our team was cut in July, and we were eventually reinstated, I remember, on January 29th. So it took a total of 6 months, and then we began talking with Nancy and Champion Women in November, and then got in contact with Arthur in December. So once we got in contact with them, it was a pretty quick timeline.
In July, I remember I was on campus taking summer classes. I was living with some other swimmers, and we received an email, asking that we join a Zoom call in 15 minutes from the moment that we received the email. And in that Zoom call, no room for questions. We were told by our previous athletic director that our team, along with 4 others, was being cut from Dartmouth's athletic program. And we had no say in the matter. Our coaches had no say in the matter. And from that moment on, we were not a varsity sport.
My coach called me because it was a pretty important meeting. He just was like, Bella, I wanted to let you know that this is a pretty serious meeting. Athletic director decided to cut the swim and dive team. And I was just speechless. My coach, Chris, continued to go on, and he said, like, we had no idea about this. Milena, Helena, and Jamie, who are our former coaches, just found out last night.
And everything was just super overwhelming because there was so much going on. A lot of people reached out, especially alumni and our family and friends, to see how they could help, which was super appreciated. And a lot of us started to jump into action. So we started the Save Dartmouth Swim and Dive Instagram, which got a lot of traction, and it was kind of really exciting to see. And we felt like we were getting some headway.
And there was a maybe 4-hour period of just shock and disbelief. And I remember visiting some other teammates and walking into their house, and you could feel the tension in the room, and people were just sitting on couches, staring at the wall. Some people were crying. Alumni reached out to us, and they were already mobilizing. They were gathering their forces, and they wanted to know what they could do to help. So they reached out to us, said, hey, this happened before, so we know how to fix it, and we're going to fix it, and we're not going to let this be the end.
Dartmouth Swim and Dive was also cut in 2003 and eventually reinstated. So they had been through this before, and we're like, wow, we can't believe that we're in the same place again, but it actually went to our advantage because they were already and even more angry the second time that this had happened to us.
The timing that Dartmouth chose for this was, I thought, really insensitive.
We tried reaching out and just asking for the metrics, what went into the decision to cut these teams? Why were these teams chosen over others? And they said that they could not disclose that information. So what were we to do with that decision?
The Dartmouth website. And one of the questions was does this decision comply with the Title IX guidelines? And they just responded, yes, this is in compliance with the Title IX. And with no data or any reason to second guess, we just kind of took that for their word, which in hindsight was a big mistake. And we later figured all of that out.
And that's, I think, why it took us so long to even start any Title IX action. We were cut in July, and we didn't hear from Nancy until November. And Nancy actually came to us and said, hey, we checked Dartmouth's numbers. This is not true. They are not in compliance. And for us, it was shocking for Dartmouth to have been so dishonest with their numbers, but also really exciting for us to see hey, we have a real shot at getting our team back.
The first presentation that Nancy and Champion Women gave with our whole team and a lot of the alumni, she had this whole presentation ready to go for us, showing exactly where Dartmouth is not in compliance. And she seemed so confident about everything. And we were wow, really, is this actually true? It was super exciting to hear because at that point, our efforts were kind of dwindling. Everything we were trying wasn't working.
When Nancy reached out to us, it was 5 months after we were cut. And at that point, I know I felt as though we had tried everything. And I think that some of us were still working really hard to find ways that we could possibly find a chance of reinstatement. But I would say the majority of our team had almost come to terms with the fact that they wouldn't be swimming or diving again. How did we not know about this? These numbers have been here all along, and we just took administration's word that they were in compliance with Title IX. And as Ashley said, she was so confident that these numbers were wrong and that we could do something about it. And so then it was a light was switched on. And after we talked to Nancy, we started talking to Arthur Bryant, our lawyer. And I remember we had our first call with him, I believe, in early December. And he, following Nancy, was also confident. And then at that point, I thought, wait, we can do this. We can get this team back.
I was still really hesitant about it because I didn't want to get my hopes up that the team was actually going to come back. We talked with Arthur, I think, in December. And I remember we had a meeting with just the girls on the women's team who decided to sign on to the settlement. And for us, there was a decent amount. There was like at least like 15 women, I believe. So that was really awesome to see us all like come together and try and save this team. I know a lot of people were pretty hesitant at the beginning on whether to sign on, and Arthur was super like honest about with us. And he was very helpful by like explaining like everything, like any potential risks. He was very reassuring and like that the college isn't going to come after you about this. Like they just want it to go away. It's really a cool thing to be a part of. Like looking back, I like still can't believe that we all were a part of this. And I actually like mentioned it in a job interview, and the guy was really impressed and said that it reflected a lot of courage, which was really good to hear.
The hardest part was getting our team to sign on. I mean, we're going against a multi-billion-dollar institution that we love. And to stick our names out there on a legal document was really scary. A lot of us were scared about any negative repercussions, like something that would happen with the school if the school would like expel us or like suspend us for taking this legal action, or if it would affect our opportunities for grad school or jobs in the future. But as Ashley said, if anything, like this lawsuit and our standing against Title IX has made our opportunities even more. I talked to one of my really close mentors about it, and it was still definitely scary to go up against Dartmouth, but she told me something that was really reassuring. And she said that there's no crime in fighting for something that you believe is right. And that's when I decided to sign on and fight for a team that I loved.
Both Nancy and Arthur's confidence was absolutely contagious. And they came to us and said, these are the numbers. Dartmouth is in the wrong. We know they're in the wrong. We can make a difference and we can get this team back. And so because they were so confident, it almost wasn't a question for me. I said, they're confident, so then I'm confident. I'm going to put my name on this document. And then I think that kind of spread throughout the team. I mean, as soon as one person says they're going to do it, if you care about the team as well, you're going to do it as well. So I think that like collectively we came together on that. And it was so great that all 14 of us signed, because that made each individual person signing maybe not as big a deal.
It was also like our parents who supported us. We had this whole like Dartmouth Swim and Dive alumni network who was behind us this entire time, as well as like the other Dartmouth athletes were in support of us for most of this whole journey.
As soon as they stated that, oh yes, our numbers are in the wrong, it was just hit the ground running. Like once Arthur told us that the motion had started, I was confident. I think the team was confident. We couldn't say anything because it was all under wraps, but I was sure that we were getting the team back. And then that feeling when they made the announcement was absolutely unreal. And I remember within seconds of it going public, I was receiving texts from acquaintances who I barely know, people who don't even go to Dartmouth, saying, hey, congrats, it's really amazing. I'm sure you had a part of it.
It was just like one of the best days that I can remember.
Arthur was great in protecting our identity and maintaining confidentiality, which was really reassuring.
I want to reiterate that we absolutely would not be here without our alumni networks. I remember like the summer they came to us with everything planned, and it was almost as though they had the plan and they told us what we could do. And then we were working with them. It was like, I had no idea that all these Dartmouth swimmers and divers were out there just waiting to jump on and help us get reinstated.
You're like so not alone in this. Like so many people are supporting you and cheering you on. And this is something that you're going to like remember for the rest of your life. It's not just like a in the moment thing. It can actually like impact your whole like outlook.
Not only does this benefit you like currently, but it also benefits generations of women to come. Like the fight for gender equity in sports is something that I think every woman is on board for, something that's really going to pay off in the long run. So we're really excited and thankful for this opportunity. And we hope that you will all join us in our 50 by 50 campaign to increase gender equity in sports across the country.
Athletes are role models, and we've learned from Donna, Nancy, Julie Foudy, Naomi Osaka, Megan Rapinoe, Maya Moore, and others, how they used their success and platforms to advocate for human rights and social justice. Alongside our male allies, we're proud to follow their examples. We hope this presentation has helped inform our audience of student athletes and their supporters that enormous gender gaps exist in college sports. But we, our generation, our Gen Z student athletes and teammates, parents, and community can close the gender gaps by stopping the intentional sex discrimination in education.
Our EQL athlete advocacy training covers 4 categories: advocacy campaign creation, athletes' rights as human rights, storytelling, and coalition building. Become a member of this Title IX coalition by joining the Equality League's Gender Equality in Sport community on Facebook and Instagram, and commit to supporting our 1-year-long Title IX 50 by 50 campaign, equipping student athletes in all 50 states to take legal action by the 50th anniversary of Title IX.
Links to both the Equality League platforms as well as the Champion Women Title9Schools.com website and digital toolkit appear on the splash page for this event and the EQL link tree. There will also be a link to this presentation for you to rewatch and share. Thanks again to the Title IX experts Donna De Verona and EQL board members Nancy Hogshead-Maker and Paul Beeben, and the awesome college students who joined our EQL Youth Council ambassadors in this event.